Good evening, and welcome to the forum on the school ballot question. My name is Richard Burenna, and I am the moderator for this evening's event. Holyoke is a wonderful city with a rich and diverse culture, and whichever side one is on regarding the ballot question on school funding, we all share a unique privilege, that of being a resident of this great city of Holyoke. It is great to see the civic engagement, and it is great to see the concern for the city. So before I introduce tonight's distinguished panel, a few ground rules. Please turn off all cell phones. The order of the speaking will be Kevin Jourdain will give a 20-minute presentation outlining the concerns of the specific ballot questions, and each speaker will have a short statement. After which, they will have been both pre-submitted from the internet and online, and questions submitted from the audience will be by index cards, which we will hand out. We'll be glad to answer any questions. So again, thank you, and now I'll be introducing the panel. Starting with Kevin Jourdain, Holyoke attorney and former president of City Council. Press Macy, Holyoke resident and business owner, general manager and founder of Applied Light on Commercial Street in Holyoke. Linda Bacon, health services director at Daybrook Village and Ward 5 City Council. Howie Graney, retired educator in the Holyoke school system and former school committee and city council member at large and current candidate for city councilor at large. Dan Bresnahan, city councilor at large who is serving his last term. Will Quello, Air Force veteran, currently serving at Barnes Air Force Base and candidate for city councilor at large. And we also have with us this evening David Bartley, Holyoke attorney and Ward 3 city councilor. And I'd also like to recognize some of the candidates who are in the audience. And please forgive me if I have forgotten anyone, just raise your hand. Jordan Lemure, City Councilor at Large. Mark Hickey, Ward 3 School Committee. And Michael Siciliano, Ward 4 City Council. Thank you. All right, with that, I will take it over to Mr. Kevin Jourdain, who will give his presentation.
Okay. Well, like Frank Sinatra would say, let's get on with the show, right? So first of all, I'd just like to thank Rich. I'd like to thank all the panelists for coming on out tonight, and to thank you, our wonderful audience, for coming out to listen. That there is, believe it or not, like in most things in life, there's two sides to every story. You're about to hear, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story, okay? And so we start here. I have my wife on the slides tonight, so thank you, Sherry. So what is this that we're talking about? What do we have that is presented to us that they're asking for us to vote on coming up on November 5th? There's a proposal to have a debt exclusion tax override. This additional tax bill would be placed on top of the regular property tax that you already pay. Until the cost of that project is paid for. So that's basically what a debt exclusion, it's specific to a specific project. In this case, their proposal is for 2 new middle schools, and that's what they're seeking. So 2 new middle schools, they say that the cost is going to be $133 million. No bond has yet been approved by the city council, but that is the number that they have come forward with at this time. They also say that it will take likely 30 years to pay for it. That has not yet been decided by the city council until they bond. They could go 20 years, they could go 25, they could go 30, they could go longer than 30 years. But that is currently the proposal. The state has approved a 55% reimbursement, totaling approximately $73 million. That leaves the remaining $60 million to be paid by you, me, and the business is of the city of Holyoke. So what is the cost when we think about that $60 million? You know, one of the things that you'll see in this presentation is there's some discussion about what the interest rates will be. Nobody can accurately predict yet. But throughout the discussions early on, and I went to pretty much every public meeting on this topic, and the number was between 4 and 5% interest rate. It won't be clear until about 3 years from now, if this were to pass, what those bond rates would be. So I just picked the middle of that range that the city financial advisors had issued earlier that year. So $60 million at 4.5% interest would be $110 million. That's what you would have to pay over the next 30 years, $110 million. So what does that look like in terms of a tax rate? That would be a $1.27 increase on the residential tax rate. It would be $2.76 on the commercial tax rate. So for the average homeowner, that is a home that is $200,000, that would cost you $254 a year. And for the average business, which is assessed at approximately $400,000, that would be $1,100 per year. Now for the average renter, we're thinking that this is going to be somewhere in the range of about $15 to $20 a month, based on the fact of, I think we can all appreciate that if the landlord gets the bill, guess who they pass it down to, right? So that is, we feel, is a very fair estimate as to the trickle down of that. And the Holyoke Mall, as the largest taxpayer in the city, they would have the biggest bill, $600,000 a year, on top of the already $8 million that they pay. And as you know, they've already publicly reported at numerous occasions, including a prior forum here, that that would be a real hardship on them to afford another $600,000 a year. And I think we all can agree that the retail market today is very fragile. So one of the big concerns that we have is the fact that we feel the question is not a very honest question. Right off the top, and never in the question itself that you'll be voting on, and in the next slide, you're going to see what the specific language is. Nowhere in the question that you are voting on do they ever tell you how much it's going to cost and for how long you're going to pay and how much it's going to specifically cost you, okay? So what we have described this is quite frankly, and until the city council bonds, and this is a very odd situation. Of course, as you know, I was on the city council for 24 years. I'm pretty familiar as the former president of how the city council operates. Almost always, whenever we have a project of this nature, it's the city council that bonds for the item. We approve some funding, and in this case, if they wanted to come forward, they should have said, we approve this for X amount, for X amount of period of time, subject to the public's approval. They chose not to do that. They're going to wait until after you vote. So they just get a blanket authorization. The other thing you should know about that is very concerning to me as a taxpayer is you approve yes, and that bond doesn't go through in December. You have the opportunity, they have the opportunity to come forward with future bond requests. That stands as an open authorization. It's like a line of credit, if you will. That project, if they keep the parameters of that project the same, that is, they stay with 2 middle schools, as you have approved here, that's an open check for them to cash in your name down the road. So, obviously, we're very concerned that that is designed basically to trick voters, because if you just look at the question, Sherry, let's go to the next slide and show the people the question. This is the question itself. You tell me where it tells you how much it costs, how long it is, or how much it's, and for how long. Shall the city of Holyoke be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Prop 2.5, so-called, the amounts required to pay for the bonds issued in order to pay the costs of designing, constructing, furnishing, and equipping a new middle school of approximately 105,440 square feet, more or less, to be constructed on an open block bounded by Cabot, Chestnut, Hampshire, and Elm Streets, and a new middle school of 105,430 square feet, more or less, to be constructed on the site of the existing William R. Peck, located at 1916 Northampton Street, including payments of all costs incidental or related thereto. Does that say $133 million? Does that say 30 years? Does that tell you how much you have to pay? No, no, no. So, when the answer is no to all the questions, I would suggest to you, you vote no. Because if you don't know, and these people are asking for your money, and there is nothing that binds them in any way, and the city council has not established this, that right there is alone a reason not to vote for this. This was never the correct approach or style. There's also, by the way, no ballot summary, unlike normal ballot questions that come, that tell you materially what all the implications of your vote are. So some of the things that we want to go through with you tonight is why this is unaffordable for you. If you didn't already know that, which you will, you already know that yourselves. It just sounds so absurd, this amount of money. I think it's just by common sense. But when we think about unaffordable for you and unaffordable for our business community, and then we're going to talk about being unaffordable for the city overall. And we're going to touch on all of these different points. And we're also going to touch on the new one, the new gimmick that came out a couple of weeks ago, what we have labeled as the October surprise. Miraculously, we've been talking about this proposal for months. Oh, we have new information. We have new gifts from the school department. They're going to cut all the costs in half. Don't worry, taxpayers. We need a vote. Give us your vote. Next slide, please. Okay. Let's think about this for a minute. When we think about affordability and where we stand as a taxes, there's been some that say, just do it for the kids. You're not paying a lot of taxes. What's the problem? Here's the problem. Holyoke is already at the tax levy ceiling. Did you know that there's only 7 communities in all of Massachusetts? There's 351 towns and cities in Massachusetts, by the way. Only 7 of which are at the levy ceiling. That is, they can't tax you anymore if they wanted to. Okay, that's what levy ceiling means. That if they tried to tax you more, they couldn't. That's why they can't give an ask for a traditional tax override, because the law precludes them from acting from a traditional tax override. That's why they have to do the debt exclusion, because it can circumvent that. And then you get the fuzzy ballot question. Here's what's happened to your tax levy. The tax levy of the city of Holyoke in 1999 was $28.6 million. 10 years later, it went to $44 million. Today, it's $54 million. Your taxes in the last 20 years have doubled. Doubled. Are you paying your fair share? I'd say you're paying your fair share. I want you to find the community in Massachusetts that can say that their taxes have gone up almost 100% in 20 years. Let me give you a sense of how big of an increase that is. We all know, some of you probably know better than I, the history of our great community. Holyoke was founded as a town in 1850. When we were founded in 1850, guess what the tax rate was? $0. From 1850 to 1999, that's 150 years, the tax levy went from 0 to $28 million. In 20 years, not 150 years, 20 years, the levy, they have increased your taxes by double in the last 20 years than it took in the first 150 years of the city of Holyoke. Question, are you paying your fair share yet? You answer that question for yourself. Next slide, please. So what does this mean for your tax bills? Like, let's turn this into real dollars. Okay. So we go back in history, in a time machine, if you will. 1999, your residential tax rate was $15.86. And your value of your home, the average home in Holyoke, was valued at $94,000. Today, the tax rate is now $19.29. And the average value is $190,000. So the average bill that you were paying 20 years ago was $1,495. Today, it's $3,677. Are you paying your fair share? And by the way, you gave them an extra $28 million a year. Why can't they pay their bills? Why can they never manage the budget, even though they have an extra $28 million a year coming in every year, on top of federal aid, state aid, all these grant funds? Commercial. The average commercial tax bill went $7,500 20 years ago. Today, $14,000. That excludes the mall, by the way. So as we're not monkeying with the numbers. Non-mall, double. Residents, 146% increase in your tax bill. And guess what? They got more in store for you. We're going to show you here in a minute. Let's go. Now it gets real special, because in 2018, The good news is housing market is up. So the assessors, they're doing their job, but nevertheless, it's going to mean more out of your pocket. They went up on the residential property values 5%. They have already announced that they're going to go up 5% more. And as you know, due to your generosity as taxpayers, 55% of the taxpayers at the last election also approved a 1.5% CPA tax increase because we were told all the wonderful things that are going to happen with that. And oh, don't worry, it's only $26. So, you know, we're a charitable people. We gave them that money, $26. Now, they're allowed to go up on the levy. That'll be $92. That's the 2.5%. Now, if we have, on top of the two value increase bumps, a debt exclusion tax override of 7%, that's that $254 I mentioned earlier, okay? Not 130, by the way, that they're saying in their literature. I'm going to debunk that momentarily. $254, your average bill, if this debt exclusion on the average home, will go to $4,200, okay? That's 18.5% to 20% over the last 2 years. Is that enough? Is that fair? Is that only $130? You know? Next slide, please. So, when we think about Holyoke, and we think about our community, the fabric of our community, we're pretty good, hardworking, industrious people. We do everything we can to take care of our families and to make this a better place to live. But life as it is not easy for a lot of our residents. And we have a low per capita income. We have a lot of seniors who are living on Social Security and otherwise, okay? So when you think about our average tax bill, $3,677, you know what the per capita income of Holyoke is? $16,000 a year. That means already you pay 22% of that income on your property tax bill. That's a lot. And you know what? Before the override, that's already the highest in all of Massachusetts. No other community, I happen to put the other ones here that are just in Hampden County, cities in Hampden County, Springfield, Westfield, Chicopee, West Springfield, Agawam. But this chart, you could make it for all 351 and Holyoke would be number one. Now, they want an increase. 4238, the number we mentioned earlier. That would go up to 26%. 26% of the income. Now let me tell you this. I know a lot of seniors, having been in elected office, there's a lot of people living on $800, $900, $1,000 a month in this community. If you're a Social Security recipient, you're living on $800, $900, $1,000 a month, and somebody says, Holyoke City Hall, I need $4,000 a year, I need $4,200 a year. You're paying literally 40% of your annual income just to pay your property tax bill. Do it for the kids. Next slide, please. Current business tax rate, $39.87 right now. Second highest in Massachusetts. But apparently the group that's advocating this feels second place is not good enough. They want to be the highest in all of Massachusetts. So they're proposing a $2.72 business tax increase. We will now go from the second, and by the way, we're not second by much. We will by far go to the highest in all of Massachusetts, not even close. I already talked to you about the Holyoke Mall, $600,000 increase. Oh, by the way, does anybody want to buy JCPenney stock? How's your Sears stock doing? Okay, what is the prognosis of retail in America? What is the prognosis of malls in America? Enfield Mall? How about the Fairfield Mall? How's that doing? How is the Eastfield Mall doing? How's the Berkshire Mall doing? I mean, these things, there's like, you could go to deadmalls.com and there's hundreds of them that are absolutely gone. And then the question becomes, they are predicating our future on that Holyoke Mall being here 30 years from now. Because if it's not, guess who pays? you pay, not just your 130 that they put in their flyer, you're gonna pay the 254, and then they're gonna come around again for the 15% that the mall's paying. You get that too. So if the mall's giving us $8 million a year, do you think it's in our best interest to also say, hey, thanks for the $8 million, but here's another $600,000 bill, and if you make it, great. If you don't, well, thanks for coming to Holyoke. Let me ask you this. If you got the highest business taxes in Massachusetts, are we likely to get business growth and jobs coming? I think we already can agree we don't have enough growth in this community. So I want to talk about the October surprise. This one kind of took me back a little bit for a number of reasons. One is, if this has been so studied and vetted of a proposal as they would have you believe, you would think that you're not going to start changing your numbers a month before the election. Like you don't just put this all together on the fly, right? Okay, so even by those standards, but having been in politics all, I've pretty much seen it all at this point, and here, this one really takes the cake. Let me tell you why the $1 million gift that the school department, Dr. Reich he mentions it today in a letter to the editor, that he is committing, as if he will be here for 30 years, he personally is committing to give $1 million from the Holyoke school budget to the taxpayers of Holyoke for the next 30 years. Let me tell you why that can't happen. Point one. The law department has already ruled in a legal opinion he may not make a direct contribution of $1 million to pay debt service. That's point number one. Point number two, it is also illegal because Holyoke happens to be at minimum net school spending. And you know what that means? That is that Holyoke's local contribution to the schools is set by state law formula. And they cannot give us back $1 million because by law, we are required to give them the minimum net school spending, which right now is about $10.8 million. So as charitable as he wishes to be, it can't happen, it won't happen, but let's just say there was $1 million extra over minimum net school spending. That's not the case. In fact, he even cited and made in prior budget hearings in fiscal year 2012 and 2016, he and Mr. Soto, his financial assistant, made it a point to send a memo to the city council, which I have kept, which basically says, you city council didn't even meet minimum net school spending, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so believe me, now that all of a sudden he wants these two schools, oh, who cares about minimum net school spending? You know, oh well, that's not a big deal. But that is what the law says. That is not possible, and when they cannot make it in a legally binding agreement. So, let's just say that they had the extra. Who thinks that promise is going to be kept for the next 30 years? I'd be shocked if it makes it one more year, okay? Because what they're invariably, and I've seen this for other departments, we had one particular situation that I don't want to get into all the details because for time, but I'll just point this out. They're going to say something like, we'll give you the $1 million, counselors, but just know we're going to have to lay off 30 teachers if we give you that money. Okay, and you know, here's the $1 million, you know, we're really short, you know, and they're always crying poor mouth, it's never enough. The budget was a fraction of what it is today, and it's still not enough, that's fine. Who really thinks you're ever going to see that 30 million? So legally you can't get it. And we all know, just from our own common sense and human experience, we know that's never going to happen. Next slide. So there goes their $130 that they're bantering that around. That's the gimmick. That's the hook. Oh, don't worry, guys. $130, just give us your money. Well, here's the next one. So I point this out, by the way, just so you can see. This is on their own turnaround plan on the Holyoke School Department website. City admin credit. This is where they're looking to play a shell game with the money. It reads that there's $148,000 administrative credit for certain services that the city of Holyoke provides to the schools. We can take a credit, certain things like law department, retirement expenses, personnel expenses. There are certain things, and what they're looking to do is turn that 148 into $1,148. okay? State of Massachusetts DOE will see through that all day long, okay? I mean, someone's gonna drop the dime on that, in my opinion. So that shell game isn't gonna work. That if city council's doing its due diligence, that would not work. Okay, next slide. Second part. Oh, yes, people of Holyoke, we've just come to the decision that we're going to cut all the interest rate assumptions from our original proposal. I know we said it was 4 to 5%, but you know, we have come up with a consultant and they have decided that we could probably do this on 2.5 to 3. So we're going to immediately guarantee 2.5 to 3% interest on these, even though their own consultant says, got to read real small down in the fine print, but of course I blew it up for your convenience. Morse's own consultant says in fine print, these projections are fluid and cannot predict future interest rates. Don't believe me, believe your lying eyes. Okay, now the other point I'd like to make is the city treasurer, I thought, did a really nice job at the forum. She said, there's no way they can guarantee 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5. We don't know that. We don't know what those are even going to be 3 years from now. So for them to guarantee, promise, put it in writing, and tell you it's $130, and all of that, and shave off like $10 million off the cost in those interest charges by changing their funny interest rate assumptions, no way. No way, don't buy into that one. Next slide. Holyoke. Unaffordable for Holyoke, no question about it. I'm going to try and go quickly through these different points, but this is the state of Holyoke, unfortunately. We have a $2 million approximately structural budget deficit. We have been consuming our free cash like it's going out of style. About 7-8 years ago, we used to get certifications between $5 and $7 million in free cash. You know what? They're not saying this before the election, but it's coming soon. You're going to hear that this year's free cash is probably closer to about $500,000. Okay? And last year was about $1.5 million. They need every one of those dollars just to balance the budget in order to set the rates, because Massachusetts has a balanced budget amendment. It requires every city, including state government, to have a balanced budget. Unfunded liabilities. Holyoke has employees. Newsflash. We have great employees. We have a $150 million unfunded pension liability. That is required to be funded by 2040. When's that going to get paid? That is consuming a large portion of the budget. It's even going to keep going up. You talk about finances, and you watch the yes people just run the other way, okay? Nobody will ever engage. I've offered to debate the mayor. I've offered to debate Councilor Lisi. I've offered to debate any of the proponents regarding the finances of this. Offer not taken. In terms of the GASB 45, unfunded post-employment benefits, $300 million. That's employee health insurance. One independent study analysis done by one of the research firm in the Boston area said that Holyoke has among the very highest, certainly the highest here in Western Mass, liability. It would cost a $2,400 a year increase in your property taxes to pay that for 30 years. That's how big that is. They got no answer for that one. They're hoping the state swoops in with some money. A lot of communities are facing it, but we have it worse than others. The current debt service is $4.9 million. In the next couple of years, according to the informational forum that was recently held, that's going up by $500,000. Service fees. They just went up on the sewer rates 25%. Pretend that don't exist. You just heard about the water, right? Got to spend $20 million, folks, on a water bond. That's going up. Water rates 25%. You know, that's not caked into the 130. Next slide. Stabilization fund. This is the last firewall before total implosion of the city in terms of its solvency. When the city went insolvent effectively and had state oversight in 1991, the city said never again, we're going to have a stabilization fund. And in it they put $8.7 million. One bad news is in 20 years, there hasn't been one contribution from any of the mayors into that fund. Unfortunately, they haven't funded it. Here's where I'm getting really concerned. 20 years later, the fund doesn't have that much more in it than it did then. Why? Because they're using the interest off of that to help with the structural deficit. You know? Because they're running out of money. It's not quite that simple. Structural deficit grows, they're running out of dough. Anywhere you can get it. And what they'll do is they'll say, oh, this is just a one-time charge. It's for snow plowing. Or we got to buy ballot machines. Or they'll fill in the blank. Okay? That's what's going on. Next slide. Outstanding capital needs. Newsflash, things break. And if we give them $133 million on this school project, there's not going to be $1 left for anything else. We have, and I think we would all agree, would like to have things like parks, playgrounds, streets, sidewalks. We got 100 abandoned buildings in town. Okay, what's going to happen with all of those? We have elementary schools that need improvements. There's a lot of stuff that's out there. Fire and police equipment. We have very little liquidity if we give them this for 30 years. That's why we got to be more responsible. We have to cover, as a community, be good stewards. We have to take care of all these needs. Can't just look at one. You got to look at the big picture. And that's what the better options are all about, which we're going to get into. The debt exclusion is it causes me a lot of concern. One of the requirements of having a debt exclusion is by state law, you are required to pay that before all your other bills. So if they run into these operating liquidity problems, they have to pay that bill first. So what does that mean? Oh, well, if we got to cut police, fire, DPW, fill in the blank. We got to cut that first so we can make sure this gets paid. Next slide. So here's the other options. There is a better way. First point I'm going to make is this was never vetted. This was a small group that made these decisions to go all money down, 133 million. As a matter of fact, when Dr. Zweig came to me as council president in 2017, he said to me, Kevin, we'd like one school, $60 million, we'll get 80% state reimbursement, and we're not going to have any tax increase. I said, it's tight, but I think we can make it work. Because I'm thinking 60 and we get 80, we're paying 12 million, we'll make that work, okay? Somehow, that became two schools, 133 million, and a massive tax increase. In a matter of just a period of another year and a half later. So I want to like to go briefly through some of these. Sherry? One is lynch. First of all, we have to ask the question, why are we selling lynch for $250,000 when we want to replace a middle school for $70 million? That's a good question to ask.